Hello, everyone. Welcome to my first YouTube channel. It's your girl, Joa McNally, and I cannot believe it, right? We are finally here. If you guys know, this has been a long time coming because although this is my first YouTube channel, this is not my first rodeo with social media, but I have been off of social media for a little while now. And God has quickened in my spirit for me to come back on here. And he is establishing me as a voice for the times, right? That's just what it is for such a time as this. And I am so honored. I am so excited because I truly believe that what God has been doing in my life has not just been personal just for me, but truly he has established me for a time so that I can help nations. And I believe that if you're watching this video, that you are part of the nation that is tied to me. So I thank you so much, first and foremost, for tuning in and giving me your ear, right? And God has given me this word, and the word is, let God establish you. I don't know who needs to hear that word right now. I don't know what your exact situation is, but what I heard the Lord tell me is, let God establish you. And so why is this important, and where am I speaking from? Where am I drawing from, right? From my own experience. For those of you who don't know me, like I said, my name is Joa McNally. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I am a student. I'm finishing my Doctor of Education at Liberty University. I am a politician, among so many other things. And so most of you guys know me for this piece of literature that I have written here, The Hero in the Helmet, Colin Kaepernick, that God gave me in 2018, which was my debut, project into the social media world, right? Before then, I was working at a mental health professional, just doing counseling, substance abuse counseling, and I really loved my work. I really loved what I did as far as counseling goes. But God was speaking to me to write a book. And at the time, I really didn't understand why or how it was connected to my purpose. But one thing I do know about God is that obedience moves the hand of God. And so when he asked me to write this book, although I felt like it was random, I felt in my spirit that I needed to do it. And let me tell you guys something. God has done more with this book than I could have ever imagined. When he says he will do the exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ever ask, think, or imagine, he means that thing. Because not only did I write a best-selling book in the United States, this book has been a bestseller in the United Kingdom. This has gone to Africa, to China, to Haiti, to Canada. I mean, it goes on and on and on, beyond my wildest dreams. What I could have ever imagined for myself, God did that. And he established my name. I have been in magazines and radios all across the country. I've done book tours all across the country. And the crazy thing about it is I had no idea how to do all of this together. This was God's work. This was a God-breathed, God-inspired project that allowed me to travel, meet people, get into spaces that I don't know how else I would have gotten into these spaces. You have probably seen me around with Akon. You've seen me with Meek Mill. You've seen me with Charlemagne the God, with Angela Yeh, with Yandy Smith. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, because people have seen the work of God and have literally just been moved to emotion. I don't know how many of you guys know the Colin Kaepernick story, but for me, his sacrifice and his stance to stand against social injustice is exactly what heroes do, right? And so the hero in the helmet came to me as a God-inspired idea, and I just went with it. I did not for 1 second think that this book would make it to countries that I haven't even been to. This book has made it into rooms that I haven't even. It literally blows my mind to see what God is doing or has been doing with this book. But I'll tell you, from that, this is where the lesson, let God establish you, comes from. Because in looking back, a year ago, I decided to step away from social media step away from all the work that I had been doing with my books and as a teacher and as an educator and as a social media influencer. I decided to step back because I felt, in full transparency, I felt that my work was not being fairly compensated, if that makes sense. So on one end, God was establishing my name. My company's vision, McNally Books, was a global vision, and God honored that. He literally took my name and he ran with it globally. And the amount of interviews, the amount of people, the amount of support that I received from doing this was just insane. However, because I did not understand what God was doing at the time, I started to feel like my work was in vain. Because although I had the magazines going, I had the radio interviews, and people, was starting to just know my name and who I was and whatever, my finances did not align with what God, the vision that God was doing. So on one hand, I was winning all these awards. On one hand, I was traveling to these places. On the other hand, I was, seen at every event, but I was financially struggling. I couldn't pay my phone bill. I could not, literally did not know where the next funds would come from for me to even travel to the next place, because as a self-published author, I didn't have the backing for anyone to send me here, there, and everywhere. I had to literally come up with the funds to establish my own tours and go into my own spaces. And so I decided I was going to come off of social media, and because I felt like I was being overlooked. How is it that God can take your name? I mean, I wish I had the magazines with me, but because I'm in Elizabeth, New Jersey right now for a conference, I don't have any of my works. But how is it that God can have me in every magazine? I mean, even Forbes. I was a Forbes 30 under 30 lister in education. And feeling like I was overlooked. Feeling like, yeah, God, yeah, this is all cool and stuff, right? Yeah, my name is going up in lights and people are starting to know about me, and the next person wants to interview me, and the next podcast wants me to come on here and talk and do all this other stuff. But I didn't have my basic needs being met. I could not survive. I was under a famine, and I could not see at the time that what God was doing was preparing me for my next season. Because how many times do we sow something and reap in the same season? That never happens, right? You cannot plant something and reap it in the same season. There is a time to plant, there's a time to reap, right? And so I started to equate success to mean not only fame, because I really didn't care for the fame, but I at least wanted to be able to feed myself, right? I wanted to be at least able to live freely and live comfortably. And every tour that I went and every hand that I was shook and every award that I was given, I was coming home with 45 cents in my account. And at the same time, I was met with sabotage from someone who has absolutely no idea about me, who's never spoken to me more than once, who saw my efforts and instead of asking where I was going, was trying to close the doors on me. People that wanted to work with me, people that wanted to give me opportunities, she was running to and fro to them and telling them that I'm an opportunist. You got to understand that. I was literally suffering in silence. I was broke and broke down. Yet this person was telling people that I'm an opportunist and not to work with me, right? And so all of these things were going on, and I really felt like, to be honest, I felt like I was being mocked because I could not celebrate my wins because I felt like I was being overlooked. I could not celebrate that my books was headed to Africa next, or Canada next, or China next, or wherever it was, because I didn't have my basic needs being met. And what I didn't understand was that God was establishing me. See, at that point, I thought I was ready for the success that I was asking for. See, I was praying to God to ask for these open doors, right? And he was opening the doors. And what I thought should happen was, as he opens these doors, I should be able to have more resources, more funds, more finances, more opportunities, more contracts, more what have you. And what God was trying to build was more character. How many of you have been there where you feel like, God, I'm asking you for this thing and God is actually giving you this thing instead. And you feel like you're being punished when what's really happening to you is that God is establishing you. I want to read real quick to you two definitions that the dictionary says about the word establish. It says to set up on a firm or permanent basis. But there's another definition that really, really speaks to me that says to ensure that one's remaining cards in a suit will be winners. To ensure that one's remaining cards in a suit will be winners. So what was happening to me was God was establishing my name to make sure that my remaining cards in my next season would be winners. And if we do not have the discernment of God and the spiritual maturity to stay down until we come up, what we might do is we might forfeit a blessing when God is trying to ensure that you are a winner on a permanent basis. See, God's idea was not to just be a winner in that season, but God's idea for me is to move to glory, from glory to glory, to be a winner, that everything that I touch, that my status would be permanent, right? And so I had to yield to the idea that God was establishing me, that God was not punishing me at all. That all of these things that were happening, right? The Forbes list, the traveling, the speaking at schools and speaking engagements, of a lot of which that I didn't even get paid for, right? Just showing up and doing God's work. I didn't even get paid for that stuff. Was training. See, David did not become king when the prophet anointed him to be king. David was already king. Time was catching up to the prophecy. Catch that. David's training for king began in his father's house, not when he fought Goliath, not when the oil poured. David's training for king started when he was fighting lions and bears and taking care of the sheep, right? In his father's house, right? And David was overlooked. David was first overlooked by his own father, Jesse, right? The Bible says that the king was going to come out of Jesse's home. And so when the prophet arrived, Jesse didn't even have the decency to introduce David. He already wrote David off. David was overlooked. And so when the oil did not pour, the prophet then had to ask Jesse, is there someone else? Because he had gotten specific instruction. And Jesse said, yeah, there's one more, but that one works. He just takes care of the sheep. And the prophet asked to let him see him. And if you know the story, you know that when the prophet sees David, the oil begins to pour. And what I want to speak to you is this. You can be overlooked by everyone else, but what you really need to focus on is that you are in the eye capacity. You are being watched under the watchful eye of the one who matters, right? Because God saw David. When David was taking care of the sheep at his father's house, David was dancing before the Lord. David had the eye of God upon him. And I just want to affirm you today that you may be overlooked by man, but what you really need to concern yourself is that you are being looked upon by the one whose gaze actually matters. And so I want to encourage you to stay faithful. I want to encourage you to stay with the idea that God gave you, with the vision that he gave you, right? If he told you to write a book, if he told you to come out with the next song, if he told you to come on YouTube, right, and do your first YouTube channel, I want you to be confident in that thing that God is training you up. Isaiah 60:22 says, when the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen. I, the Lord, will make it happen. A lot of times we try to establish ourselves. A lot of times we try to do it in our own power, in our own strength, in our own intelligence, in our own right. And what happens? We experience burnout. We experience fatigue. We experience weariness, right? We want to give up. We get tired and we get frustrated. But the word of God says that if we do not faint, if we do not weary, if we do not get weary and we do not faint, right? That's when the Spirit of God comes upon you, and he gives you influence so that you can rise like an eagle, right? And so I want to encourage you guys today, whatever that God is calling you to, let God establish you. Let him do it, because when he does it, it's perfect. The timing is perfect. The resources are perfect. The people are perfect. He knows how to arrange times and seasons and people to make sure that you get you to your rightful place, and to ensure that your remaining cards will be winners. So that's my spiel today. Let God establish you. And so my commitment to you guys is to come here every week and to drop a word that God is saying for me to speak. And so every Wednesday, you guys can look forward to every Wednesday that I'm going to come up on here, and I'm going to share with you what the Spirit of God is saying to me. And this time, my promise to you guys, and my promise to the Lord and to myself, is that my eyes are not fixed, are not gazed on how many viewers are watching, how many likes I'm getting, how many comments I'm getting, right? Because my true desire is to really make the one who actually matters pleased. I want him to be pleased with me. And so that is my commitment to God and to myself and to you guys as well. If you are so inclined, please like, share, comment, subscribe to my channel. Let people know about this. And if you guys are looking for me, my Instagram is joa.mcnally. My Facebook is Joa McNally. Twitter the same, Joa the author. And I'm so excited to see what God is going to do in this season and how he's just going to grow this more and more. I love you guys. Until next time, we'll talk later.